Hava tequila. Wow. What's up, everybody? Yes, I know I started with a lame joke. So what? Get over it. Don't change the channel. So, anyways, my name is Michael Stephenson. Welcome to my channel. You are currently watching my entertainment industry series. I know that probably this is going to be the very first video that most of you are exposed to me through. So I have to do my little rundown spiel. Please bear with me. But I have been trying to do these videos in a particular order, and the reason why is because I'm trying to build up a particular language or lingo on this channel specifically so that we could talk through movies, television, all that stuff, and have a shorthand so that hopefully my later videos can be a little shorter in length. This, by the way, warning right now, this is most likely going to be a very long video, and I'm talking probably hour plus, somewhere in that range. There's a lot of stuff that I need to cover, and I kind of talk slowly, so just bear with me. If you are not familiar with the channel, I'm going to definitely be dropping some of the language that I've already built up on the channel. So if you're not familiar with it, like the Lost Effect or the Avatar era, please go back and watch those videos. You can watch them after you watch this video and like catch up, but I would say watch them before you watch this video, just so that you know and that you're not lost within them. I would also like to put in a few disclaimers right now. Number one, I know that you all have read the title. You probably are enraged a little bit. Might be some rage bait for you. I'm not there to try to make rage bait. I am just trying to do these videos. And again, please go back to one of my first videos as far as the entertainment industry goes. Most of them are already within the Hollywood is Broken playlist. So you can just go there and play that playlist. But there's a few that are outside of it. I am not trying to be exceptionally mean to people. I am a writer. I have been trying to break into the industry, into Hollywood for a very long time. So I understand how it is to be an artist or an entertainer and to feel a certain way when you get either bad criticism or people just really go in on your stuff. Of course, I'm also a consumer. I wear that hat. And then thirdly, in most of my stuff, I also try to approach it from a business person's perspective as well. So I have a business degree. I try to approach things from those three standpoints. Let me also say this. I have read Dune as well as Dune Messiah. Now, bear in mind, it has been quite a while since I actually read both of those books. We're talking at least a decade. I tried to get into Children of Dune, but I just couldn't. I copped out somewhere around 60 pages or so. No, it is not because it was too weird for me. As I said, I'm a writer. I do have some self-published books on Amazon. The links are down below. Some of my stuff gets weird too, although I don't think I have anything super weird out right now, but just bear in mind the weirdness that comes in Dune is not in any way, shape, or form an aversion to me. So I'm not somebody who's just coming in and is like, I don't like it and I don't understand it, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. No. That is not it. But I will say this. I have been thinking about doing these kinds of videos for a very long time. This sort of Hollywood is Broken thing where I look at all of art and entertainment across the field, not just film or television, but music as well as publishing. I don't know when a lot of people started to realize this, but I realized it with the start of the Avatar era, that something was uniquely and incredibly different about the movies that were, all of the entertainment that was suddenly being made and being put out for the general audience. Somewhere around 2015, 2016, somewhere in there, I started wanting to do these videos, but I kept putting it off, mainly because I really don't want to put any sort of negativity out into the world, especially when I still want to be in the industry. That stuff can come back to haunt you, and I don't want to be haunted. But at some point I was just like, I have to do it because this stuff has been nagging on my mind for years. I say that to say this. I was looking around for really good examples of what I was talking about, the things that were wrong in Hollywood were. And I finally found a TV show, the show which shall not be named. That's what it's known as on this channel for me. I just don't want to mention the name for various reasons. That, in my opinion, is one of the shining examples of what is wrong with Hollywood. And then I came up with another one a couple of years back It was, oh God, it was the bad movie that just keeps on giving, the movie of Tenet, which is quite literally Christopher Nolan's worst piece of work pretty much ever. I thought, yeah, this is definitely a really good example of a lot of the things that are wrong with Hollywood. And then lo and behold, Dune just dropped in my lap. Dune Part 1. So, what is this going to be? As I just said, I do believe that Dune Part 1 and probably Dune Part 2 as well. But again, I'm releasing this video a day before even the review embargo for Dune Part 2 comes out, let alone a week and a half before the film actually hits theaters. And I'm doing that on purpose so I can sort of get a jump ahead. But as I said, I do believe that it symbolizes a lot of things wrong with Hollywood right now, wrapped into one beautifully looking package. So what you're going to experience in this video, and I apologize now because I probably don't have the timestamps of like the different subjects that I'm going to be covering. If you look through my channel, you'll see that I'm very new to YouTube. I'm still trying to get everything together, as well as manage my writings, making time to write new stuff, etc., etc. So I'm having a little bit of hard time doing all of that right now. But hopefully I can get into a legitimate rhythm. What you can expect from this video alone is that, number one, this is partially going to be a review on Dune Part 1. Number two, this is going to be a look at the business aspect surrounding the movie. And then three, I'm going to also look at things surrounding Dune Part 2 and what I think it will probably do well and what I think it will probably still struggle with. We're going to end it with some things that I would have suggested if I were actually part of the team behind these Dune films, okay? I gotta be real with you guys. I'm actually kind of nervous about making this video, not because of the potential backlash or the response that I'm going to get. I'm more nervous at the fact that I have been thinking about this movie for so long. I might have thought about too much stuff, and I'm afraid that I might somehow forget to mention some things. And I kind of want to get almost all of it out, all of my things about Dune out in one video, so I don't have to go and, torture myself with Dune anymore. I have seen this movie, Dune Part 1 at least. I've seen Dune Part 1 a total of at least 7 times at this point, including just last night before recording this video. So it is still fresh in my mind, and I did that as a refresher course just to make sure that I was right about some of the things that I am going to critique. But I guess we should start with some of the biggest problems with Dune Part 1 that are definitely going to affect Dune Part 2. And that has to be the fact that Dune Part 1, my God, Dune Part 1 suffers from the Lost effect in a big way. The biggest reason why it suffers from the Lost effect in a big way is because of the fact that Dune Part 1 has no plot. And that is one of the reasons why I hate the criticism concerning it, relating it to Lord of the Rings. Let me back up and say this. In general, as a writer, it is good to know some of the basic structures of any genre that you write in. I am a multi-genre or basically cross-genre writer. I have written in pretty much every genre that there is to write in out there. Not all of those books are out right now. Some of them I pulled off the market. They were out, but I pulled them. But being a writer, you should know the basic structures of your own genre, the one that you want to major in the most. Well, there's a reason as to why, and I don't know if any of you have, as at least consumers, I don't know if any of you have actually noticed this, but the majority of fantasy stories, and again, we have to admit that Dune is just as much of a sci-fi book. Yes, it actually does have legitimate science within it. It is just as much of a sci-fi book as it is a fantasy book. The fantasy genre is dominated by stories that are essentially journey stories. Again, they are stories that are journey stories. And no, in this case, I am not talking about the hero's journey. I'm not talking about that oftentimes overly used literary idea. It's almost become a layman's term, in my opinion, to where people that only halfway know what they're talking about will use it and say, it didn't have the hero's journey, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. I'm talking about a legitimate journey story. So when you go back and you think about fantasy stories, novels, TV shows, films, they almost always have this kind of thing to where the heroes or the protagonists are journeying from one point to another to do something. Lord of the Rings, they are leaving the Shire as well as, the other places that they leave the fellowship, they gather together. They are leaving where they once were in order to get to the what y'all know the name. I'm blanking on the name right now of the mountain volcano where they throw it in. Well, anyways, they have to journey to get there. Right? Star Wars, even Star Wars, Luke has to journey. And yes, I know the connection Star Wars Dune. We'll talk about that later because I got some interesting stuff there. But Luke has to journey away from Tatooine to become the person that he wants to be, or to seek adventure and everything. You have to journey to the Death Star to defeat Vader. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The kids have to actually journey away from their house to go through the wardrobe. And then once they're even in the land of Narnia, they still have to go to a certain place. They have to get to a certain location to do a certain thing. Even in Game of Thrones, honestly, you look at it and yes, it's a TV show and everything is stretched out, but at least one of the main characters, guess what? They have an actual journey. Daenerys has to journey across. Dang, what is the name of the land that she's in? I know it's a bunch of different quote unquote nations or tribes that are there, but she has to journey across that whole thing to cross the sea just to get to King's Landing. It is a journey. It is something that where you start at point A and you go to point B. The reason why most fantasy stories have some kind of journey in them is because of the fact that the journey structure makes it easy to actually insert a plot into the story. What is a plot? Again, I go through this all the time. Well, I've gone through this at least a few times in some of my other videos. A plot is literally just heroes or protagonists and what they are trying to accomplish, what their goal or objective is. When building out a fantasy, or frankly, even when building out a lot of sci-fi stories, generally what you have is that you have the writer creating an entirely new world. They create this whole thing and they do it in such minimal or such minute detail that they spend most of their time doing that, creating all the details and creating all these weird things, all these intricate things. Weirdly enough, a lot of them don't want to have to spend time creating some new kind of structure for their story. A journey structure allows for them to not only be very nitpicky and very minute, very detail oriented on and with the world that they have built, the world that they have created, but also because the people within the story are journeying from one place to the other, they are allowed to show different cultures, different and new technologies, and different and new ways of thought, of being, new creatures, all of this stuff. They're able to showcase everything that they've thought of that is super creative that they wanted to put into this story. The journey allows them to do that. And then, of course, at the very end, you have a goal. The biggest problem with Dune, and again, going back to Lord of the Rings doesn't have this problem. The biggest problem with Dune is that it does not have an actual journey structure in the traditional sense of having a journey structure. And because of that, it does not have an actual plot. We go back to Lord of the Rings. They set upon this journey. The first Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, the movie, not the book, just the movie alone. They set upon this journey, and what happens? And by the end of the film, they get waylaid. The Fellowship breaks up. Everybody who saw Dune Part 1 was trying to compare it to Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring. They were saying, well, you can't really compare Dune Part 1 to other movies because it's one part of a 2 or 3 or even 4-part story. So just like Fellowship, you couldn't really compare that. That was kind of a lesser movie too, and it was part of this long story. So you couldn't really do it because no, you could. And here's the reason why. Again, in the journey structure, there is always a goal or objective that we as the consumer, as the reader or as the watcher, know that the protagonists need to accomplish. When the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship, when they embark on their journey, do we know where they're going? Yes, we do. We might not know the specific place that they're going because they have to stop at the elves and all that stuff. But we, throughout the entire story, not just in the Fellowship, but throughout the entire trilogy, we know exactly what they are trying to do, what they are trying to accomplish, the goal that they are ultimately trying to get done. They are trying to destroy the ring. In Dune, what are they trying to do? What is Paul? What is Paul and his mother? What are they trying to do? What is Paul trying to do? Do you know throughout almost any part of the movie what they're trying to accomplish? Where they're trying to go? Why they're trying to go there? No, you don't. Because you don't have a goal at the end, basically what you are left with is that you're left with a whole bunch of happenstances. You're left with a whole bunch of things that happen, but they don't seem to mean almost anything. Why? Because the audience does not have focal point. Now, I talk about this in another video because it's technically a through line. I talk about this in my video. You can watch that video, Through Lines. But essentially, there is no through line through the story that the consumer can follow and say, this is where they're going with this. This is constantly where they're going with this. This is their goal. This is their objective. This is the thing that they are trying to accomplish. And this is how they want to get there, but also this is how they actually do get there. If you don't have a legitimate stated goal or objective in the movie, you don't have something to where it's like, yes, this is what we want to accomplish. This is what we want to do. If you don't have that in a movie, then you really don't have a plot to the movie, because things are just going to constantly be happening and you're not going to know why they're happening or really care why they're happening. I hate to say that, but it's absolutely true. Think about this. The movie doesn't even need to be a fantasy or sci-fi movie. This is just basic plotting. Basic plotting. And the movie doesn't even do that well. And it blows my mind that this movie was nominated for a Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar. We'll get to it a little bit later, but I am just so infuriated by that and by what that potentially means for the future of writing and writing films. Because, my God. But think about almost any other movie. Almost any other movie. Now, TV is different. I'm going to have a video on the difference between TV and film and how they've merged or blurred that line in the last 20 years. But TV has always been different, okay? If you want to stick around on my channel, wait for that video. I would ask that you please do and subscribe. But if you don't, that's okay. But TV has been different. But film, you got to have some sort of plot. We have to know where we're going. You can name almost any movie. It doesn't matter. Almost any movie. It does not matter. Saving Private Ryan. What's the plot to Saving Private Ryan? What is the goal that they're trying to accomplish? The objective. Do they accomplish it? Any rom-com around out there. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. What's the goal? Do they accomplish it? Almost any drama film. What's the goal of Kramer versus Kramer? Like, what is the stated goal of Kramer versus Kramer? The divorce drama with, what's his name? Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep. What's the goal there? It's just a single dad trying to figure out how to be the best father to his son. But also, that is the plot. That is the goal. Yes, you're not going to have one specific thing where it's like, oh man, he's accomplished how to be a father. But you actually see him improving and putting in place systems to become the father that he wants to be. There's real breakthroughs there. There's all sorts of stuff that you're like, okay, yeah, he's doing it. He's getting there. If you don't have a plot, if you don't have a goal, an overall objective for the protagonist, for the characters to try to accomplish, then guess what? You generally lose the focus of the audience. And I hate to say this, but it doesn't matter how smart or how non-smart the audience is. At the end of the day, the audience needs steps to follow for the goal. The steps of the plot are literally the things that make the tension. Here's a great example of it. And I use Marvel as an example a lot on this channel. And I believe that Marvel is not cinema. I think that Martin Scorsese is right. And I'm going to have a video on that sometime in March. But I use it often on this channel as examples of things that have been done right because, number one, everybody, or not everybody, but a great amount of people have seen the Marvel films. So it's just easier to reference something that a lot of people have seen. Take, for instance, Endgame, right? They go back. What is the objective? Go back in time, grab the Infinity Stones, come back to modern time, bring everybody back from the snap. They go back in time. They're trying to grab the Tesseract. Tony actually somehow gets the Tesseract. It's him and it's Ant-Man. They're working to get the Tesseract. They grab it, but lo and behold, the Hulk comes out of nowhere, bumps him. So here's how it goes. You have steps. What is supposed to happen? One, They're supposed to go and grab the Tesseract. They go through time. They go through time. So time travel accomplished. Step one, good. Two, grab the Tesseract from the old timeline, Tony. They do that. They accomplish that. Ant-Man is able to do his job. Number two, accomplished. Step two, accomplished. Three, get the Tesseract safely out of the building and back through the timeline. But the problem is that boom, three goes wonky. They don't get that because the Hulk comes and he bumps Tony, the Tesseract falls out, Loki grabs the Tesseract, and then immediately disappears. If you don't give the audience steps to follow, then guess what? You oftentimes don't have tension in the story because the steps essentially give the audience something to say, but something to follow. So they say, listen, this is the plan. This is what we want to happen. The tension comes when that thing that they want to happen goes sideways and it doesn't happen the way the protagonist, or in some cases the antagonist, planned it to go. Or in some cases, both the protagonist and the antagonist planned it to go. So in other words, the steps not only create tension, but they also allow you to see the consequences of something, which is another thing that Dune did not have. The fact that Dune lacks a plot means that it had no objective or overall goal for the entire movie, that it had no steps and thusly couldn't build tension very well throughout the film, and then more importantly, you don't know the consequences to almost anything that happens. One of the key scenes that stood out to me as being completely and totally utter crap was right after they go into the desert. So it's Paul, his father Leto, the doctor, dang, why can't I think of her name right now? She's a male in the book, Gurney, right? And some other people in there. They return back to the city, and Leto, he basically says to her, "Oh my God, like you see the equipment that they left us, blah blah blah." And then he says this line. He says, "You know what will happen if I can't deliver the spice." And she looks at him like, my thing was, okay, maybe she does know, but guess what? I, as an audience member, I have no idea. I have no idea. What does happen if he can't deliver the spice, if he can't do the job? Does anybody else know? And again, please, for the love of God, do not give me the Lost effect. I know that most of you don't even know what I'm talking about when I say the Lost effect. Go back to that video, watch that video, because I don't want to hear anything in the comments about the Lost effect, about, oh, well, the book. I don't care. I don't care. Like I said, I've read the book. This is the movie. This is not the book. What would actually be the consequence of him not delivering not only the spice, but not delivering it on time? Does anybody know? Because I swear to God, I really don't know. Is the Emperor going to kill him because he couldn't deliver the spice on time? Or is he just going to banish him back to Caladan? What is the consequence there? Does anybody know? That is just one instance, but there are multiple instances throughout the entire film that are like that, to where you have no idea what the consequence will be if the protagonists or the heroes don't accomplish something. And even when they do accomplish something, you then also don't particularly know or kind of even care what the effect or the impact of that accomplishment was. All of it is kind of just, oh, okay, that happened. What's the next thing to happen? Maddening. No plot to this movie at all. Now that I have said that there's no plot and I've wasted way too much time talking about the non-existence of the plot, let me undercut literally my own observation, my own analysis, and say that yes, it actually does have a plot, but the plot is so poorly structured that it really should not have been the plot. And what is the plot? The plot is that they basically have to go to Arrakis and do what? Make friends with the Fremen. That's the plot. How terrible of a structure of a plot is that? I mean, really, how terrible of a structure of a plot is that? So think about this. Right now, not only just across the world, but especially here in America, we are currently going through a loneliness epidemic. Again, we are going through a loneliness epidemic. We've actually been going through a loneliness epidemic apparently for at least a decade, because that's how many years ago that I read an article about, yeah, people are really, really lonely and we have no idea why. Now think about this. Some of you, I'm sure, are still in school, whether that is high school, junior high, or college. But for those of you who are adults, and this might apply to some of you guys who are in school as well, but for those of you who are adults, Think about the last time that you actually made a legitimate friend, whether it was through work or through school or wherever you made a legitimate friend. Now think about this. If you can do this, when was the exact point in time in which you knew that you were friends with that person? You guys had switched over from being maybe people who once saw each other and waved hi to legitimate acquaintances to actual true blue good friends. Yeah, I know. It sounds stupid because for the most part, the majority of people cannot pinpoint that very moment in which they said, yeah, this person is a friend now. Not unless you literally had a friend who was like, yeah, I'm going to declare this moment as this is the exact moment that we became friends. Like, unless you have one of those friends, and I've had some friends like that myself, actually, unless you have some people like that in your life, chances are that you didn't know when you became friends. It was just sort of a slow boil kind of frog in hot water type of thing. You just naturally became good to each other and became better to each other every time you saw each other, and you started hanging out, and then you went places with each other, and then you hung out at each other's houses, and you invited each other over, and maybe you know each other's kids now, maybe you haven't met each other's parents. It is a very slow progressive thing. That does not work in a movie. In a movie, you need solidified objectives and goals so that the audience can track their progress. They can track the progress of the protagonist throughout the story. Another reason why, again, the movie feels very much so like a whole lot of stuff happens, while at the same time, almost nothing happens. And so it's just like, oh, that was a movie, I guess. It leaves a lot of people wanting more, but also not really wanting more because they mainly just want to know what the heck they just saw, what they just experienced. Because again, the plot that is there is so flimsy and it doesn't have the general markers that we usually as consumers look for to make sure that we are tracking our own progress through the story while we also track the progress of the protagonist, of the groups of people, of the hero, of the antagonist, of the anti-hero, of whoever it is that we are following. These progression markers, for the most part, need to be in not just a fantasy story or a sci-fi story. They need to be and exist within a story, within a narrative, just to actually be a legitimate, full-on story. It's writing 101, and they missed the ball on that one straight off. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Let's jump away from the plot just for a minute and actually go into characters, because I already see that I'm already running super long. My God, the character building is atrocious in this. First off, let's start here. Anybody who is a writer, my fellow writers, all of them out, for the love of God, do not listen to the stupid, idiotic advice of, oh, you should make your main character, you should make your main protagonist basically a lifeless, formless, characterless void so that all of the people in the audience, they can identify with the character and put themselves into the character's shoes. That's how it works. No, no, no. Stop. Don't do that crap. Don't do it. It is bad advice. Stop doing it. Yes, there are plenty of characters and there are plenty of writers who have been able to do that. They've been able to essentially make characters that are, for lack of a better word, not actual characters. They're just a stand-in of do-gooderness. But don't do that. Stop, please, for the love of God. And if you are going to do that, at the very least, do not in any way, shape, or form ever, 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 I don't care how many awards this dumb movie, this dumb franchise may actually win, how many Oscars or whatever it may actually win. And again, we'll get to my anticipation for Dune Part 2 and where it could improve. So it might be a good movie, but don't ever do what they did in the first Dune with Paul, or frankly, with any of the characters. Don't do it. So first off, I did a video on character building like literally yesterday. In fact, I might have released it today, depending on how I release these videos. But it's called Character Building 101. Go and please just watch that video. It's like 20 minutes long. So yeah, it's a decent chunk of time for you to watch and to listen to. Looking at just Paul, he does not hit. I would almost dare to say that he doesn't hit any of the three main building blocks for character building 101. I listed them in that video. The character needs to care about something. The character needs to have motivations to do something. They need to constantly be doing something from scene to scene. And the character needs to be understandable. What does Paul really care about? Yeah, you can say, oh, he cares about his family. But does he? I feel like he honestly expresses more care for Duncan, Idaho, than he does for the rest of his family, for his father, and even for his mother. Are we sure that he cares about that? When he gets to Arrakis, does he have any kind of emotional connection at all to pretty much anything? I get it. I remember the book, and in the book was very heady, and weirdly, the book was very heady in an emotional way. So Paul was always thinking and analyzing, and frankly, overanalyzing almost every single situation. That to me, in my opinion, it should have translated on screen as Paul before becoming part of the Fremen, before becoming this, white savior. And yes, he is a savior. No, I am not going to give him some just because Frank Herbert is like, oh, this is actually a commentary on the same. No. Listen, I'll tell it to y'all like this. This is a little tangent. I'm telling it to you like this. In my opinion, having read Dune and Dune Messiah and then a little bit of Children of Dune, in my opinion, he is no different of a savior character than literally every other savior character. And Frank Herbert's analysis and criticism of the savior complex idea was definitely not in its infancy. It's definitely not a childlike understanding of it. But to me, it was adolescent. It stopped at adolescence. It was not the full adult understanding that we should have. So yeah, you can say that it was deep, but it's not nearly as deep as it should have been. Now, let me say this. I will have a whole video on the entire savior complex as it stands. And I will tell you more, if you want to watch, about why I think that Frank Herbert's his criticism does not go far enough. And it's almost kind of wrong. Okay, I'll lay it out for you. And I'll also be talking about the Matrix in that video. But that's going to come later. It probably won't even come until March. Going back to Paul, before he even becomes this whole savior thing, the way the book is written to me, I would have played it as he's a very anxious person, because that's what anxiety-riddled people do. They constantly are analyzing and overanalyzing everything happening around them, everything that's being said, every action that other people are taking, things that are being said to them, things that are not being said to them. Why is this person thinking this way? Why is Gurney so discouraged? Why is he so worried? Why is he this? Why is he that? That feels like an anxious person, not someone who is completely devoid of his feelings. And yes, even in the book, and like I said, I don't want to give into the Lost effect, so I don't want to talk too much about the book, but even when he's talking about his father's death, about hearing about his father's death, and he's trying to figure out why it is that he can't be as, I guess, emotionally connected to it as he wants to be, even that feels like some sort of an anxiety-induced worry to me. And yet they don't play him that way. They instead play him as an emotionless void. And it got on my nerves in the movie so much. Like, dude, not only did they play him as an emotionless person, but they played a lot of the characters like that, to where it was like, we're not going to show a whole lot of emotion. One of the first big things that he has to do, Paul, is that, of course, he does the whole hand in the box thing. And that's really the only place where I felt like I saw any sort of real emotion from him. But outside of that, I mean, was he even sad that he had to leave his home of Caladan? We see him dip his hand in water. That's it? That's all you're going to give us? That's all that you can give us. He dipped his hand in water. That means that he's going to miss water. But does it though? Are we sure of that? Are you sure of that? Because there's never any kind of emotion at all when it comes to the homeland that he is leaving, nor honestly when it comes to him arriving on Arrakis. We don't see, he's a teenager, for God's sakes. He's supposed to be, in the books, I believe he was like 15. Even if you age him up, and let's say he's 19, boys are still going through puberty at 19. We are still emotional messes at 19. We're still going through ups and downs, the roller coaster that is adolescent at 19. He should have been able to show and express something emotionally more than what he was giving us. All we were getting were these dough-faced or po-faced looks of mm, it's almost like, and I believe Timothée was just in a Calvin Klein commercial. It felt like the whole movie was just an audition for that commercial. Maybe it was Calvin Klein. I think it was. That's just how I felt. It's just like he was posing throughout the whole thing and trying to do some sort of Zoolander model-esque face of, oh man, I'm conflicted about this. I don't know how to feel about these things. Do I even have emotions? Are those things that I'm supposed to have? What am I supposed to do with my hands? Should I just cross them? I'm not sure. I'm not really sure about anything. Dude does not express any kind of emotion. I hate to say it, but even pointing out the scene in the tent where he's like freaking out and suddenly he's crying because, oh God, I see banners of war raged in my father's name, raged in my name. Like, why is he freaking out? It's war. Like, do we even, like, hold on, wait a minute. Are we even sure that he's opposed to war? And if we are, like, he's opposed to war, why? Why are we sure of this? This plays into what I call, well, I think this is an actual term, assumptive reasoning. That we as an audience, or people in general, just assume that something is supposed to be a certain way. And so we start to reason things from that assumption, from that already based assumption. It's almost kind of like confirmation bias, but it's slightly different than that. And the reason why I say that is because I know a lot of you are probably right now getting ready to type in a comment or getting mad at me because you're looking at me like, what? That's crazy. Of course he would oppose war. It's like, okay, why do we think that? Number one, dude has pretty much never been around other children, which is yet again a plot point that kind of is dropped in the movie. They don't really discuss his upbringing or anything like that. If he's going to miss some friends that he had on Caledon, they don't really say anything about it. Yeah, they try to say that he's sort of sheltered or that he's been working to prepare for battle and all this stuff, but they don't talk anything about whether or not he has any kind of social life at all, which no, he's not really supposed to have a social life. But to go back to it, again, why do we automatically assume that he is against war? He is a sheltered, rich, aristocratic young man who has probably never seen a battle before ever in his life. His mother and father have been safe for his whole life, from what we can understand. He probably has never lost somebody to battle in his whole life. And I know some of you are saying, well, people are just naturally against war because it's a terrible thing. I hate to say this, but are we sure about that? In this society that we're in right now, have you all looked across the rest of YouTube? Have you looked at some of the political commentators on both sides of the aisle? Have you not heard about all the people, not just here in America, but literally around the entire world, that constantly want to gin up and call out, oh man, civil war, it's going to be a civil war. I think we need to have a civil war. I think it should be have we not heard of this? Tons of people. There's some older people, sure, but there are also, weirdly enough, a bunch of younger people who have never seen war in their lives calling for it for some dumb reason. Are we sure that Paul is against war? And if so, why do we assume that he is? And suddenly he's freaking out. Oh God, You have to, like, I hate to say that because it seems like it is such a basic thing. Like, oh, that should just be common. That should just be a common thing that you can put in there. But we're talking about a completely different world. This is a future world. We have no idea what anybody's concept of war is. We don't. You have to make it so that the characters make us, the audience, understand where the moral and ethical ground is in pretty much everything. Because we don't understand that about Paul, And we don't understand a whole bunch of other things about Paul and his character that makes it stick out as being a bland character. So I hate to say it, but I kind of didn't care what happened to Paul. Like, I knew what was going to happen, obviously, because I had read the books. And, I also saw the David Lynch movie, and I even saw the miniseries, sci-fi miniseries about 20 years ago. I was just like, I don't care about Paul, not even because, oh, I want to put myself into his shoes. No, because he didn't express any kind of emotion. You could have at least had the character express something to where it seems like he's fighting not to express emotion. He's fighting against his better judgment to be sad or be angry or be tormented by something. No, he doesn't really do much of anything, and he doesn't really have a full-on emotional matrix. But then on top of that, he is not emotionally connected to almost any of the actions or motives that he takes. Think about this. We go from, in one scene at the beginning, he's talking about, what if I don't want to take over House Atreides? Basically, what if I don't want to be the leader of House Atreides? Okay, well, all you just have to do is be my son. Leto says that, crappy line, and we'll get to dialogue and stuff in a minute. But he's like, well, all right, then fine, whatever. And he just sort of drops it from there. He goes from that to suddenly he's in the desert and he's freaking out. Oh my God, there's going to be war in my name. And, I can see it happening, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And he's visibly disturbed. The only time pretty much in the entire movie in which he really is disturbed. And yes, that even includes the final battle scene, the knife fight. To suddenly, this is a weird thing, in the little, I guess it was an underground bunker thing, where they have the tree and they're growing stuff, and he's talking to the doctor, and he goes from, again, not wanting to House Atreides, not fearful of war, to suddenly he's like, hey, what if I marry one of the Emperor's daughters? And she's like, you crazy, you really want to try it? Like, the Emperor hates you. He doesn't want to somehow make you in line for the next Emperor. And then he says, well, I don't know if you noticed, but I could probably make Arrakis into like a paradise if I was the Emperor. What? Did anybody else catch that? How ridiculous that was? How ridiculous of a turn it was? I know Frank Herbert, but the way that he has expressed emotion throughout the whole journey, throughout the whole movie up until then, is like, I'm not sure that I want responsibility because, I would probably have to fight and do all that stuff. And I don't know if I want to do it. To suddenly he's like, I should be the Emperor. I should do that. That sounds like a job that I'm fit for, right? Never had a job before, but Emperor seems like it would fit me. I don't know. With no, and he also says that in a bland, flat tone that is like, yeah, I guess, hey, if the job is open, I guess I'll do it. Sure, I can be Emperor, I suppose. It's like he doesn't even have an emotional connection to the outlandish foolishness that he just said. like what? Oh my God. That is not even to talk about, again, the other characters that are also emotionless. I hate to say this, but I felt like Oscar Isaac was the one who probably did the best in the movie. It's either between him or Jason Momoa. Like, the two of them did the absolute best in the movie. Everybody else, it just felt so bland. I even hated at the very end, during that fight, and all the Fremen are around. They're all gathered around, and Shawnee is there. Everybody knows that it's a fight to the death, except for Paul. He's in the fight, and everybody sees that he's winning, and then he kills old dude, and nobody, well, not nobody, I shouldn't say nobody. There were some extras in the background that they actually had the right reaction. But Shawnee specifically, she had no reaction. Like, oh, I would not have let you kill my friends. She goes from that to, well, fool's got to die, I guess. Like, fool's got to die at some point, I guess. She didn't react at all. None. Not at all. Not at one single lick of a reaction. When she decided to show some emotion, she couldn't even be bothered to act a little shocked, or it's like, oh, I can't believe I'm losing a friend. No. She doesn't bother to show emotion until they're walking through the desert and they see somebody riding a worm and she's excited. Like, you do realize that one of your peoples just got killed by an outsider, by an outworlder, mind you. He ain't from your world. He just killed one of your people, and you just like, man, well, I guess I should be. I guess should I smile at him? Like, should I smile at him and start falling in love with him right now? Like, did seeing him kill one of the people who she's been riding with for however many years and who we saw at the very beginning of the film also, did seeing that dude die turn her on? Did he get her hot somehow? Is that why she's like smiling at him all of a sudden? Like, this is dumb. It's stupid. It was, I don't know if it was poor writing, poor directing, or poor acting, or just a mixture of all three. But my God, was it terrible. My God, was it terrible. Speaking of terrible, let's move on from character building and character development. And yeah, now I'm trying to push the pace because I'm already an hour into this thing and haven't even covered like half of the stuff that I want to. We go to the actual design of the movie. It's funny because I watched a ton of other reviews when the movie came out. Mind you, I watched them after I saw the movie. And the movie, let me mind you this also. I did not see the movie in theaters. I had HBO Max, so I stayed home and I watched it on Max. The first time that I watched it, I fell asleep. It was too boring. I couldn't do it. So the second time I watched it, I was like, okay, I'm going to actually legitimately watch this movie. I watched it all the way through. I thought, wow, that was a bad movie. But it was trending online, so I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. So I waited about a week to watch it again, and it was still on Max. It was on Max for like a full month. Same day and date release, right? And so I watched it again. Fell asleep the third time as well. I just couldn't do it. It was too boring. So the fourth time, I was like, okay, I'm going to stay awake again, and I'm going to try to legitimately give this movie all of my attention and try to legitimately see if I can understand what people are talking about. Again, I want to be in the industry. I have already written stuff. So if I want to be in the industry, I need to at least know what is popular and why people like certain things. I watched it. I was like, no, the movie did not get any better. I don't know what these people are talking about. It's still bad. And one of the reviews that I watched both good and bad reviews. One of the reviews I watched was a bad review. They hated the movie. It was an older gentleman. He looked older than me, at least. And he was talking about how not only was he a fan of Dune, of the books Dune, but that he wanted it to be just one movie. Like, they could have done it in one movie. I don't know why they didn't do it in one movie. And he's right about that too. But the biggest thing that he was right about is that he could not stand the way the movie looked. Now, don't get me wrong. The movie actually, weirdly enough, it looks beautiful, but it also looks what I consider to be sterile. It's very sterile. And he was basically saying, like, the color palette in this movie is so incredibly bland that they might as well have shot it in either black and white or sepia tone, like an old Western, because that was how it felt viewing it. It was just not really captivating movie as far as color and schemes of that nature went. And he hated that. Ooh, man, he is super right about that. He is super right about it. Not only would it have probably looked better in black and white, weirdly enough, it is just amazing how bland and desaturated the color is in this film. Yes, Dune is a darker story and all that stuff, and there are some scenes that they are incredibly beautiful. They do look great. The cinematography in this film is amazing, but for the love of God, you can barely see almost any colors in the film. It's funny too, because you could be forgiven if you didn't see the movie in theaters and you thought that Paul and some of the other dudes were just always wearing black. Like, you would be forgiven for thinking that, because again, the colors are so muted and so desaturated in this film. They're wearing a dark green, by the way. The colors of House Atreides are dark green and I believe orange. It might be red, but if it is red, I think it's orange. I think that's what I remember. If it is red, even the red is desaturated to look sort of orangish when what's her face is is wearing them, when she's wearing that big long flowy dress, but the colors are dark green. Paul is, when he has like suited up and everything, he's wearing green the whole time. He never wears black. Even the still suit that he has markings of green on it. It is not just a flat black or grayish suit. It's green. Unless you have your TV at home still set to the display settings that you used to watch House of Dragons season 1 or Game of Thrones the long night episode, and we all know what those settings were, right? I mean, we went in, it's like, oh crap, we can't see anything. Turn the brightness up to 100, turn the contrast up, but not all the way up because we still want to be able to see some stuff. Turn the color temperature to bright to hot, right? Those settings to try to see the long line. Unless you still have those settings on the TV, I wouldn't be surprised at all if you didn't see the dark green color. It's like a dark emerald green, well, yeah, really dark emerald green that they wear. It's actually a very nice color, and it looks really good on them if you can tell that that is the color. Another thing, the spice in and of itself, the spice is supposed to be like this nice red and reddish color. The only time you really see that in its brilliance is when they're in a tent and it's in the air. It's crazy to me that Paul gets off the little dragonfly, and he dips his hand into the sand to grab a handful of sand, and he's looking for the spice, and you still can barely see the difference between the spice and the sand. Which, speaking of, I know it's sand, but it's like, come on, are you serious? Sand can come in all sorts of colors, and I'll be honest with you, I thought that this was going to be a visual feast of actual color and magnificence at the very beginning of the film, when they had that shot of the sand, and Zendaya's character Shani, she's talking, she's narrating, and she's like, oh, Arrakis is really beautiful, blah blah blah, and they have this beautiful landscape of, I believe, sunset, and the sand has this nice orange hue to it, and I'm like, that looks beautiful. Because if y'all don't know, if you have never been to a desert, I've been to a few deserts. If you've never been to a desert, or I guess a beach in this case as well, sand, the way that it reflects the color and refracts the color can change over the course of the day. We get one good shot at the very beginning and at the very end of sand that looks actually appealing to the eye color-wise, and then the rest of the sand throughout the entire movie is the tannest or beigest color that you've probably ever seen. And don't get me wrong, I actually like those kinds of muted colors. White is like one of my favorite colors, but my God, this movie was a nothing burger to look at. Speaking of looks, let's also talk about the actual set design. I said it was sterile, right? Did you see pretty much anything in the entire movie that looked like it belonged to or within an aristocratic family or compound or anything like that? My God, Baron Harkonnen, in the book, the character is supposed to be demarked by his opulence, by his gluttony. The reason why he is so incredibly fat is because of the fact that he indulges way too much. We saw in his little throne room, and it was nothing in there. It was void. It was devoid of anything in there. Almost every single room that we went into, whether it was Paul's bedroom, whether it was, I guess that was Leto's bedroom, maybe it was old girl's bedroom, I don't really know, because again, she's technically his mistress. She wasn't his wife, right? Leto, I'm talking about Paul's mom. There was almost nothing in any place. And then even on top of that, when they entered the city and they were flying over the city, it looked like it was, to me, an Egyptian archaeological dig site. It's what it looked like. And all of the workers had gone home for the day, or they had the day off or something. It did not look like it was a lived-in environment. It did not look like it was something that was, oh, this is a city with actual people in it and all this stuff. It just didn't look like anything. But neither did Kaladin. Kaladin didn't look like anything either. It just felt like, we need to save money. So how can we save money? Oh, I know. We'll just rent out very large warehouses. We'll put a bunch of concrete in them, and then that's it. Like, well, we don't want to put other stuff in there, like decorations and things of that nature? No, because that would be too complex and too complicated, and it would be very expensive to do. I feel like that's what they did. I feel like that's what they said to themselves when designing this thing. It's so sterile. It's like, how does anybody live in any of these things? You could be forgiven for being a fan of Dune and yet still not wanting to dress as any character from Dune, because what is there to dress up as? I guess you could wear a steel suit, but even the steel suits are not cool looking. Whether it's the costume design, the set design, I still do think that the film is visually pleasing, but it's pleasing, but at the same time, I do consider myself to be somewhat of a minimalist. So it's like, yeah, it's pleasing, but it's pleasing in the same way that I kind of like looking at empty rooms too. Like, they are also pleasing to me. So I can understand why other people would look at it and be like, this is boring. Moving on, because now I'm having to cut some stuff, because again, this is running too long. I might have to make another video. Basically, Dune Part 1 had not a single lick of quotable lines. There was nothing, no piece of dialogue in it that was quotable, that was memorable enough even to be quoted. How can you have a movie, call it a hit or not, and the audience just can't grab onto anything when they're leaving the theaters to either say or obsess over or anything? It had no quotable lines. There was no real lines in the movie that were good. They were just in service of trying to move the movie along. They weren't even in service of the plot. And yes, you can call out, well, what about this line? What about that line? The only lines that were even halfway memorable were the ones that came directly from the book. The writers didn't improve upon literally anything. The only line that I can call out is the one line about they are brutal. And I will take that, and I'll probably put this toward the end of the video. I'll tell you why I thought that was a decent line and what they could do around it. They probably won't do this, but what they could do. Moving on finally into some of the stuff around the movie, like how people talked about the movie, how people related to the movie and stuff, and how that could potentially affect Dune Part 2. One of the biggest things that people said to defend Dune Part 1 was that it might not have been as exciting as it could have been, but it was incredibly faithful to the book. So it was a movie that was made specifically for the fans. While you can use that to defend it, my problem is this. Dune Part 2 most likely has to break away from the book. I mean, yes, they're going to use plenty of stuff still from the book, but it has to be sort of its own animal, mainly because it has to fill in the gaps and actually, or at least it should fill in the gaps and actually do the heavy lifting that Dune Part 1 did not do. I saw a lot of people saying that, look, Dune Part 1 had to be what it was because it had to set everything up. The problem is that it didn't really set up anything. That's another one of the problems having to do with the plot of the film. You still don't know a whole lot of stuff. You don't really understand what a mentat is. You sort of get why Harkonnen killed them, but you really don't fully get why the Empire sent them, why the Emperor, sent them there. It's like, wait a minute, hold on, you sent them from their home world to Arrakis to mine some spice, which there's a passing mention, which in my opinion almost feels like a throwaway line about what the spice is and what it is used for. The thing that is central to the story is a throwaway line. You never see the spice used, not by either one, not by the Fremen who use it as, a hallucinogen, basically as a drug, nor by the aliens that can manipulate space and time to actually travel through the dimensions and whatnot to get across space. You never see any of that. And it's just a throwaway line. Yeah, the spice, the most valuable thing in all the galaxy, it's just used for this, whatever. What exactly did it actually set up? The only thing it really set up was a potential revenge plot. And therein lies one of the rubs, is that if the first film was super duper faithful and the people who loved the book, they loved that film. If the second film is not super duper faithful, but it's a better movie, what sort of defense do the people who like the first film and who are fans of the books, what sort of defense do they then have? If you like the second movie, or if the second movie is just better and more people like it and it makes more money, then why couldn't they have, and it breaks away from some of the rigidness of trying to adapt the book, then why couldn't they have done that in the first film to actually make a serviceable film that was literally, sorry, I usually don't say literally all that much, I really don't, but when I'm trying to rush through stuff, I think I say it a lot more, so I apologize for that. But how are you going to defend it breaking away from the source material? to change a few things here. Like if you see the movie Dune Part 2 and you see something that happens in Dune Messiah happen in the movie, or something that happens way into Children of Dune happen in the movie, how are you going to defend that? Because they could have just made a good movie the first time instead of going back and either breaking from the book and trying to retcon some stuff that they didn't really fill in all that well. It just gets on my nerves because that was one of the biggest defenses that they had. It was the Lord of the Rings thing. Oh, it's just like Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. No, it wasn't. Lord of the Rings had a legitimate goal, a legitimate plot. Every single movie they were trying to destroy the ring. Or, oh, well, it was really faithful to the book. No, like, okay, sure, it was faithful to the book. I will give them that. They changed a few lines here and there. What's her face? Jessica said the line, the mind fears the mind killer, all that stuff, as opposed to Paul. But if they change stuff, what are you going to do? So hey everybody, so I did decide ultimately to split this video in half. You just watched part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. I'm sure that is right up next in the playlist. If you want to play it, go right ahead. In that part, I talk about what I thought about the advertising, the marketing for Dune Part 2, how I think that Warner Brothers is not really very invested in the film, and a few other things, how I would have changed the film if I had been writing or had been on the team. So I would love if you would go over to that video and watch that all the way through as well. Hey everybody, so while I don't have an official sign off yet, I guess I should do the whole please like, comment, share, and if you so desire and you want to see more, subscribe. But more importantly, I will ask that you please go and purchase one of my books. They are mostly ebooks, and pretty much they are all under $10. See if any of my work is actually any good, if it lives up to any of the things that I'm talking about here on my channel, specifically with the entertainment industry videos. So please go purchase my books. All of my links are down below. Thank you.